All right, so this lesson was very video heavy, which we're not going to repeat, so this will be a fast one. 3.4 Human Population Dynamics. We have Soylent Green, a video all about overpopulation and a solution to it. Spoiler, the Soylent Green is the people. And then we had the video trailer to watch it. Then we had a video showing how humans have spread over the surface of the earth and then how population has changed over time. Some of the big milestones: human population was very, very low as humans spread across the surface of the earth. And then when the agricultural revolution began, that's when population started to increase. Yeah. And then with the industrial age, that's when that exponential growth really took off. And then here we had a video showing the what the typical person looks like according to National Geographic, based on data available in 2011 when world population officially reached 7 billion. Okay, here we have countries by population size. The bigger the circle, the more populous the country. The three most populated countries on Earth right now are China, India, and the United States. Indonesia's getting close, but China, India, and US are number 1, 2, and 3, respectively. Also, most of these large country dots are either brown or red, which means they are from Africa or Asia. Most future population growth is predicted to happen in those two areas. So these countries that already have large populations relatively, they make up the majority of these dots, are going to be where the populations are growing even more in the future. Now we have a cartogram showing the relative proportional sizes of each country based on its population. The smaller the population, the smaller the country. As India and China have the two largest populations, they are much larger, whereas a geographically large country like Canada has a very small population, so it has almost disappeared over here on this side of our picture. Geographically, it's much bigger than this, but based on this cartogram, where each square represents 500,000 people, it's only this little section right there. Russia, the largest country in the world, should be covering all this part of the world, but it has a relatively small population compared to its size, so Russia is really relegated to over here. Proportionally, Southeast Asia over here is much bigger on a cartogram than it is on an actual geographic map, because that's where most human population is concentrated. And then interestingly, down here we have little baby teeny tiny Australia, which is an entire continent all by itself, but going off of population, it's just this teeny little pipsqueak. Okay, here we have a breakdown of what 7 billion people do around the world. This is by occupation. 1.9 billion, almost 2 billion, are too young to work. This is important when we're going to talk about population pyramids, age structure diagrams. 1.7 billion people work in service industries, and 1.4 billion people work in agriculture. So just those three categories make up 2/3 of the people in the world. The remaining third, 800 million, work in industrial jobs. 430 million people are unemployed, either by choice or by circumstance, and 400 million are entrepreneurs. The remaining 5.77 million, 5.77 million, there we go, are too old to work. Of all these numbers, the two most influential ones are going to be these young people and these old people. But we'll talk about that when the time is right. 1 million people are added to the Earth's population approximately every 5 days. Really, it's a little bit less than 5 days. It's 4-point-something days, but we're going to call it 5. These milestones in population growth, I already mentioned one, agricultural revolution. This started about 12,000 years ago when humans stopped being hunter-gatherers and they started planting things and eating what came out. You now had more resources available per person. You could have people who didn't have to live these transient lifestyles, so they started to live longer. Population started to increase. This was the first major moment in human history when human population started to increase significantly. We also had improvements in sanitation and medicine. Here we have a diagram of a lady emptying her chamber pot directly into the street. If you're putting waste into streets where it's going to be around everybody, you're going to have much higher levels of disease. Once people realized they shouldn't be pooping in the street and wash their hands once in a while, people started living longer, which was the next big boon to human population growth. The next one was the Industrial Revolution, but we don't have a slide for that because it's more important later. Okay, then we get to Thomas Malthus. Have humans exceeded Earth's carrying capacity, or are we going to? Thomas Malthus said yes. In 1798, back when human population was just under 1 billion, he already had concerns that human population was going to exceed the Earth's carrying capacity. There would be too many people, and we wouldn't be able to feed them. He noticed this by looking at data that populations were growing exponentially, but food output, food production, agriculture was a linear output. And exponential growth will always beat linear output. Always. So he came up with this theory that eventually human population would exceed this ability to feed, and it would lead to what was called a Malthusian catastrophe, where you would have war, famine, and disease that would reduce human population. So either humans could reduce it themselves, or nature would do it for us. Many people agreed with him. Many people still agree with him. However, some people disagree. Their ideas are that humans are smart and they're developing technology and new techniques as time goes by. So population is growing, but we are coming up with ways to put off that Malthusian catastrophe. We're increasing the agricultural output, so we're increasing the slope of that line. So the people that don't agree with Thomas Malthus think that humans will consistently come up with solutions to that agricultural output. They'll put off that Malthusian catastrophe until human population kind of levels off on its own. They're also not wrong. The most recent boom in human population was a result of the Green Revolution. And here we have a series of photos showing the transition from old style wheat to Ernest Borlaug's style of wheat, which is almost single-handedly credited with feeding many countries around the world. Okay, what do you think? Yes or no? One of the big problems with agreeing or disagreeing with them is the Earth's carrying capacity is not known for certain. It's hard to do that kind of hard science like in chemistry or physics with the planet because we only have one planet, so we don't have a control. We don't have anything to compare it to, and it's really hard to get everybody to agree on changing their ways for a purpose. Current estimates put the Earth's carrying capacity between 8 and 10 billion, and that number changes depending on level of affluence, specifically what diet people are eating. The more people eat like people in the US in terms of high meat consumption, the much lower that carrying capacity is. The more plant-based diets people eat, that carrying capacity goes significantly up. Okay, so factors that influence human populations are the same factors that influence any population of any organism. Population size, birth and death rates, fertility, life expectancy, and migration. The difference is that humans exert more influence over this than most of our compatriots do. Most critters don't engage in any sort of family planning. They're capable of reproducing, they're going to reproduce. Humans are one of the only species that are like, you know what, I don't really have a good job right now. I'm not at that place in my life. Maybe I won't have kids. So humans get singled out specifically because they have more influence over these variables than most of nature does. And that's as far as we got.